The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's hump day in the Riv.
It's the day to give it an applause to the incompetence of the Fall River Housing Authority and its board. Yay!
Oh yeah, we got a ton to talk about it. That may be most of the show, but I do have to mention that the news story that I saw on one of the local TV stations about the gang violence in Fall River.
We don't have any gangs.
And all the arrests, and it harkens back to, I remember a former mayor who denied this, completely denied it. Now all of a sudden, task forces, everything happens. You know, where has everybody been? And this will segue into the inaction, and it seems like they all got narcolepsy. None of them, they're all sleeping at the switch, that they don't notice anything until it becomes a crisis. But I can guarantee you one thing. Their paychecks are on time. They made sure of that. And their pay raises got into the, you know, I'm sure that that all these excuses were not associated with a delay in their paychecks. And why do we pay these people? We'll get into that. But the gang violence in Fall River, what did they make, 30 some arrests?
38 arrests.
38 arrests. I knew it was in the high 30s. 38 arrests. But don't you remember back, God, it's already been a whole bunch of years now, because time flies when you're having so much fun, as we do in the Riv. Remember they were talking about gang colors in the high school and the Bloods and the Crips, and,
yep.
And we've had gang violence in this city for years now, and all of a sudden now, we're going to have a task force, we're going to have it. Why didn't we have it? Why didn't we try to nip this in the bud at the original formation of gangs? Why? Because this city will never admit they do anything wrong or there's any problems. And Steve Long, who's in this article asking for resignations, he should resign. Because he's the guy that saw a thriving metropolis in Fall River. And he said that in front of a TV camera at a city council meeting. The thriving metropolis with the gang problem, the opioid problem, the unemployment problem, the poverty problem, and you see a thriving metropolis. Well, maybe you're the one without a perspective too, because you know something? Here's another thing to show the absurdity of the way Fall River's government handles things. We're still talking about economic development and getting tourism directors. And here we're on TV, the entire area. 38 gang arrests, shots fired every other week, poverty, drugs, everything in this city. And you really believe that people from another area are going to come here? I mean, I don't even think people from Detroit would come here. So, I mean, I just had to mention that because every time I see it, it just makes me nuts. Because I see this stuff, and it's always after the fact. And unfortunately for them, I have a pretty good memory. And I remember discussing the gang problem during the Lambert administration. Because Mayor Lambert categorically denied we had a gang problem, and then a few months later, we had gang problems. We've been having gang problems since the Lambert administration. So what do we think in this city? Does our government believe that if you just leave gangs alone, they're going to disappear? They're not going to get larger and stronger and more well-armed? You got to get everybody out of there. Really, you just have to get everybody out because, I mean, the level of incompetence in Fall River, we lead not the country, but possibly the world in total inability to face reality to have any degree of competence at anything. So now, when we talk about never having anything and preparing for anything, let's get to the Housing Authority, unless you got some gang comments.
No, hey, the gang comments? We don't have any gangs, remember?
That's right. There you go. Run for office. Well, so concerns raised as Housing Authority moved disabled residents into elderly properties, right? So, CJ, take it away.
Well, you know, what's interesting about this is my mother was actually complaining about the fact, because she lives in what was classified once as an elderly-only housing, but she was saying that young people were moving in with children, families, who were alcoholics and drug addicts, and my mother has a thing about alcoholics and drug addicts, but that's neither here nor there. And the Housing Authority denied it. They denied it. Now we've got it in black and white. Yep. They failed to do their job.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look, before we get into how they didn't do their job and how screwed up we are again and how we'd love to spend money and pay people for doing nothing.
And let's remember, though, before we even go there, Jason Burns and Mary Sahadi are on that board, okay? Mary Sahadi's been on it for over 20 years, and these people can't do their job?
Well, they audited the city for over 20 years, and they never got one right either.
Exactly.
It wasn't even an audit. I mean, you know,
it was a reconciliation.
Mr. Hague admitted it was a reconciliation, and you know, and under oath. And I've got the transcript. So if anybody wants to call me a liar, you know, I want them to prove it, because I'll produce the transcript that a court stenographer took during the arbitration when he admitted that they didn't have the proper data to do an actual audit. But they did it every year, even though the law requires an audit. It doesn't say reconciliation. It doesn't say, you know, give me an erector set instead of a building. You know, it says you have to do an annual audit, and they didn't. But, you know, again, Fall River strikes again. But let's look at this. You know, we've got gangs roaming the streets, so the elderly are afraid to go out on the streets. We've got drug addicts, gangs, you know, and they're afraid because these people are going to want money. Now you're going to stick alcoholics and drug addicts. Again, our socially, politically correct environment creates a hazard for normal people, especially the elderly. And by the way, I don't have the stats with me, but we have probably the highest elderly population in the state of Massachusetts. I have that stat in one of my briefcases. I don't have it, but I'll have it for Friday, our elderly population. We also have one of the highest, if not the highest, people under 65 on disability in the state.
That's right.
So you put drug addicts in a place where you have elderly people. You put them in the building. Well, what the hell? Why secure the building? Just leave the doors open, let them all come in and just rape and pillage, because junkies steal from their own family. I don't care if it's not politically correct to say this. You want to take drugs, you should get one shot. After that, you're a criminal as far as I'm concerned, because you made a choice. I don't want to hear disease. You know, nothing that you do voluntarily. Nobody volunteers for cancer. Nobody volunteers for muscular dystrophy. Nobody volunteers. Those are diseases. They're biological. When you make a conscious choice to smoke a cigarette and you die of lung cancer, it's a self-inflicted suicide. When you stick a needle in your arm, it's self-inflicted. Just like the guy I was reading it somewhere, I forgot where it was. Guy had a child in a car seat behind him, overdosed, and it took 4 doses of Narcan to revive him. So this is what we've done. Now you're going to put junkies who steal from their own families. They sell their children's toys. They steal from virtually everybody to get a fix. And you're going to stick them in a building with elderly people who are virtually defenseless. And that, to me, is just reprehensible. How the Housing Authority could not address this issue, and I think the new director actually made the comment in this article that nobody was upset or something like that. I didn't have that one underlined, but He actually made it like it's no big deal. We haven't had that many people complain. Well, when elderly people have their apartments broken into, their purses snatched in their own building from junkies that are looking for a fix, they should put your butt in jail. And the entire board's butt in jail because you don't care. And you have no perspective because you don't live in those high rises. You don't live on a fixed income and have no money. And now you're going to put them, you know what the junkies will call this? A target-rich environment. How long do you think it's going to take them to figure out that they could take advantage of the elderly?
Well, here's I think what you were talking about here. Barrow said he felt the meeting with Fiola and approximately 30 to 40 residents went very well, and the staff explained the process and the timeline. Nobody was up in arms, said Barrow, who indicated that about 15 young disabled residents have been placed in former elderly-only facilities. That's 15 too many.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether nobody's up in arms, which I don't believe, because they lied through their teeth, just like there was no gang problem, and there was no problem at all in this thing. The reality is they lied through their teeth. They always make an excuse, and they never do anything. Now, this is where we get into it now. I'm going to read from this article. This is not my words. However, HUD informed the Housing Authority they're still required to submit a new application for designated housing. Due to some changes in the status of the Fall River Housing Authority, a consultant was hired. A consultant. These people have been on our board, some of them for 20 years. They get paid to run the Housing Authority, but every time they're late on something, they don't have any accountability. There's no consequences for them being late again, not filing it properly. Here come the excuses, and what is the remedy?
Hire somebody else.
Hire a consultant.
Hire somebody else.
Why the hell are they employed? Why do we have them? Why do these people have jobs? We have maintenance departments that don't maintain. We have housing authorities that, oh, we didn't get it. Now, here's another one. This is the comment from our interim director. The date set by HUD apparently came and went without the submission of an annual plan. Well, you know, who cares about time limits? Do we remember? Do we remember Dominion? Does anybody, are we the only people, are CJ and I the only people with memories here? You remember when our law department went before the city council and said they didn't know about the date? That was their excuse. Well, we didn't know that. And I mention this on a show often. They said they couldn't find the correspondence, they couldn't do this. CJ took out his phone and Googled it, and in like 15 seconds, we were reading the letter in the order with the date that it was due. But our law department that was pulling down about, I don't know, $750,000 in salaries and benefits, they couldn't find it. And by the way, they also said they could win the appeal, which they didn't, and they also hired outside attorneys to handle that appeal. So people, if you haven't figured out yet that we have a government that is totally incompetent, never holds anybody accountable for anything, I don't know what you need. What more proof do you need? And now they're going to put junkies in with the elderly. Well, the hell with it. You guys go over to Westport and try to encourage the farmers to get some wolves to put them in the hen house.
There you go. Well, you know, and accordingly, you know, the temporary director Barrow said until DHP is approved, the Housing Authority is still required by law to place the young disabled in all housing. Once approved, the properties will be designated the same as before, he said. So what do you do with those people that you've put in there? Do you force them to move?
No, they won't. Look.
Do you force them to move? No, you can throw an old lady out on the street because her neighbors don't like her. Okay? You can throw her out on the street because her neighbors don't like her, and she has a psych problem. You throw her out on the street all you want. Okay? But, God forbid you don't put a junkie in there who the neighbors aren't going to like either and throw them out. Because, well, they have a disability. They can't be touched.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. And again, they're saying that they have to do this now. Well, technically, they always had to do this.
That's right.
Because that was the law. So you ignored the law up until now. Do you think really that, from what I see, and maybe I'm just can't just have it. I don't have any reading comprehension, although I know I do because I've had tests on it. So, and I've done pretty well. To me, it appears as though what they're saying is, if they do this paperwork properly, then they can segregate them again. And the problem is they never got the paperwork in.
That's right.
So it's their fault. They created this problem. They created a problem. They couldn't get the plan in on time, so we wouldn't have this problem. And now, because of their inaction, these people are going to be victimized in the high-rises. And what's their action? Does anybody take their pay away from them? Does anybody, except Steve Long, who said, I want all their resignations, which is just, you know, we know that, you know, he likes to listen to himself, and he knows nothing's going to happen because, you know,
it's Fall River.
He's friendly with half the people on it. Nobody on that board's gonna get canned, and if they do, they'll be replaced by more people who are politically connected. But the reality is, this is a problem that they created. Does anybody see a pattern? Does anybody here in this city besides us? And we're not conspiracy theorists.
I see one.
But we're conspiracy theorists. Does anybody else see a pattern here? A pattern of total disregard for reality, a total for inaction, incompetence. Exactly. Yep. And what do they get for it? Most of the time, a pay raise. And they get help.
Or $120,000 settlement.
Yeah, or a $120,000 settlement, or they get consultants to do the work for them. Oh, wait a minute, we've been paying you for 20 years to do this. You haven't done it, so let me give you a pay raise and a consultant to do the work for you. It's like our charter. We had to go out and hire an out-of-town consultant to write that disaster, and we paid him 40 grand, and then he got a few other gigs with the city, because they're all politically connected. And look at the great job he did. We elected people to write that charter from a perspective of Fall River residents. You had to be a Fall River resident to run for the Charter Commission, which obviously shows the intent that we wanted the Fall River Charter to be fashioned by people who are going to be affected by that charter. But we hire a consultant. That's what we always do. No, we don't do it. They do it, and we pay for it.
That's right.
And make no mistake.
And this way their hands are clean. Oh, no, I didn't do it. The consultant did it.
Yeah, and make no mistake about it. They'll say, well, the Housing Authority, it's federal. Well, guess what? You pay federal taxes, too.
That's right.
You know, the only difference is we're making everybody in the country pay it at the Housing Authority for our incompetence. But this is just, I mean, this is just totally unacceptable. It's just, you know, I mean, I look at this and, I mean, I don't know what world you live in. You know, I mean, if you go to a self-defense course, they'll tell you the first thing you got to be is be aware of your surroundings. Try to stay out of certain areas. You don't go into neighborhoods. You don't walk through certain areas at midnight, you know, unless you want to get mugged or killed. And it's a reality. And, you know, maybe it's not politically correct to talk about that, but the reality is it is functionally correct. You know, you want to walk through the middle of a ghetto, no matter where it is, and no matter what the demographic composition of that ghetto is. You want to pull your Mercedes up, park it in front, curb pocket, walk out with your Rolex and stuff, and then when you get back to your Mercedes and it has no tires, you know, if it's even there, and then again you probably won't get back because somewhere after about the first half block, You'll be laying in an alley with your Rolex, your money, and maybe even your life gone, and everybody will go, oh, me, oh, my, how did that happen? Well, guess what? There are certain places you shouldn't go, just like there are certain things you shouldn't do, like jump into a pool full of gasoline smoking a cigar. There are things you just shouldn't do. But our wonderful, I don't even know what name to call them, but our the politically correct police, you can't talk about that. But then you can be horrified and have demonstrations and cry when people get killed because you won't face reality. You want to give everybody, put the junkies in with the elderly. When we have a catastrophe in a housing authority, remember what they did and remember who was responsible. The housing authority, because by their own words, they didn't get it in on time. They hired a consultant rather than doing their own job. And by their own words, the date set by HUD apparently came and went without the submission of a plan. Well, whose fault was that? Oh, it wasn't my fault. I'm only the director. We're only the board. What, we had a date to do something? Oh, well, no wonder we didn't get it on time. We didn't have a consultant. We didn't need somebody to tell us that it was our job to submit this. You know, it was only Housing and Urban Development that set the date. Is it the first time? No. Everybody go. I don't know if it's still you can get it in the archives. Get that city council meeting when the corporation council said, well, we never got that date. We never saw that date. We never saw that letter. Well, it was online. CJ got it in like 7 seconds. And it was really, I mean, you should cry when you see this kind of incompetence, but you have to laugh to stop yourself from crying, because we're listening to this total line of BS, and we're reading the letter and looking at the date, and it took 7 seconds for us to get it. So obviously it was out there. It wasn't like some private communication that got sent only to our law department, but our law department didn't act. And then after that, what's their response? Oh, don't worry about it. We'll appeal it. We'll straighten it out later. And they didn't. They lost. Just like this. What's their response to them not doing their job? Not, oh, God, I screwed up. Oh, no. Nobody's complaining. Let's hire a consultant, and then when we screw it up again, we'll blame it on that consultant. So, I don't know. If you got an elderly relative in a high rise, I would be out in front of the housing authority next meeting with pitchforks and torches
and demanding the resignation of the entire board.
That's right, of everybody.
Yep. Speaking of politically connected, seems that Michelle Dionne got appointed to the Redevelopment Authority by the governor, and nobody knows who solicited that appointment.
Well,
but. Dionne replaces Bill Kenny, who was appointed to the board by Governor Deval Patrick. 4 members of the authority are appointed by the mayor. 1 person is selected by the governor. According to information Dionne submitted to the Herald News during her run for city council in 2017, she has limited economic development. Does that surprise you? Does that surprise you?
No.
Here's her economic development, okay? Shaker Village, where her duties included limited to ordering, pricing, hiring, scheduling, payroll, banking, all employee and business-related matters. There is her economic development.
That's nothing to do with economic development.
Right.
We know that. But her resume includes correctional officer, serving as a counselor for adolescent girls, being a manager. She has an associate degree in human services, which is not, I don't think it's really
But here's the
germane.
big question, because this has already been going around. Is she going to run for city council again next year? Because if she does and she wins, because she only came in 10th this time, so it's possible, she's going to have to step down from the Redevelopment Authority because the charter says you can't serve.
Oh, who cares what the charter says?
Who cares what the charter says? Exactly.
CJ, come on. Let's see in the next election if there's an issue with school committee, because if the school committeeman who's a member of the fire department decides to run again, that's going to be an issue with the charter.
Of course.
Again. So now we got Michelle Dionne. I'm looking at this, and we don't, the behind-the-scenes political machinations. I mean, the board's a tank board anyway. They're like bobbleheads because right here, the composition, 4 members of the authority are appointed by the mayor. So who's the mayor going to appoint? All his friends. And 1 position selection of the governor. So I'm sure since probably Charlie Baker, but probably the person from Fall River he knows the most is C.J. Ferry. And I'm sure that if he said, oh, the only guy I know down here is C.J. Ferry, you want to appoint him, I can imagine the reaction from City Hall. So I am sure, since I don't think Charlie Baker knows a heck of a lot of people down here, I would assume that he asked for some
a list of
guidance,
recommendations.
some guidance or some recommendations from the mayor. So now we got to, I mean, obviously this is a theory. I am not stating this as a fact. However, I would, you have to use, a logical set of conclusions to come to some kind of theory. But my theory is that he probably looked for some direction, since, as I said, he doesn't spend a heck of a lot of time in Fall River.
Do you blame him?
Yeah, and as that woman said from the retirement board in another community, said, when we invited her to Fall River, she said, why would I ever go to Fall River? That's probably Baker's first thought, too. He may not articulate it, but that's his first thought. So, well, like you said, here's another perspective problem with our charter, which, by the way, was fashioned by a consultant.
Well, what's interesting is I had a conversation with Michelle Dionne at a political event last week. You saw her. You were there as well.
Yep.
And she says, you're so mistaken about me, CJ. You think I'm this, I'm in line with everybody around. Well, when you're given the impression that you're a rubber stamp for people, that's the impression people take. So much so that after this appointment was announced, social media started saying, look, another rubber stamp for the mayor. And what's going to happen now? And we're going to watch this. We're going to watch this happen because right now, the Redevelopment Authority is in charge of economic development. They were in charge of it before, but they gave it to somebody else.
You're right. And obviously you had that conversation with Michelle. I didn't. I just said, hello when we exchanged pleasantries. But I have to say, as you said, I'm not saying that she's going to be they can say she.
I don't know if she's going to be a rubber stamp.
That's going to be that, but that's the impression because of who she was affiliated with and alliances. But she will have her chance to prove it when there's an issue that we feel that there should be an alternate position from the other 4 bobbleheads, and in her defense, as I said, it's she was on the opposing side for the debt override.
Yes, she was.
So, people say, oh, we're always, it's always negative. No, I will give her credit. I mean, obviously, she's not going to get credit from the people who were pro-debt exclusion, but she was on our side arguing about the debt exclusion. And guess what? We were proven right, because it's been proven we didn't need the debt exclusion.
That's right.
And they're
still proving it.
And they're going to get another one. They're going to get another one for Diamond. So, but she was on the. She was, well. Let's put it this way. I don't want to, but I want to clarify, because they'll say, well, our side. Well, I'm not saying she was on the right side. In my perspective, she was on the right side. I think our side has been proven right. However, she was not on the prevailing side. She had enough courage to take a position that the politically connected people were on the other side. So we'll give her credit. Let's hope she's as independent on the Redevelopment Authority.
And again, the proof will be in the pudding, watching her actions on the Redevelopment Authority. And I wish her the best of luck on it. But remember, Michelle, if you decide to run for city council and you get elected, you're going to have to step down off the board, or you're going to have to step down off the city council. That's the charter, and that's the law. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you on Friday, and stay angry.